From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is Ag Day.
What do you get when you mix baby chicks and kindergartners?
I like them, and they're really fluffy.
It's cuteness overload in the country. Trouble on the tracks. Texas Ag fights to bring an important rail project back to the state after a battle at the border. As the West Coast braces for another possible backup.
You don't shut down one of the biggest world sports, ports in Shanghai and elsewhere without having an impact.
The latest as the supply chain crunch grows again right now on Ag Day. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Port congestion is growing again around the world, and that could soon lead to backups and further delays here in the U.S. Now, one maritime firm estimates nearly 20% of container vessels around the world are currently waiting outside congested ports. The biggest problem right now, COVID lockdowns in China, which have caused backups at the world's biggest container port in Shanghai. Now, Shanghai has started to lift COVID restrictions, but some shipping experts say it will take months to recover from the backlog. And once the restrictions are fully lifted in China, there's concern Western ports will get slammed. The U.S. has been chipping away at a logjam on West Coast ports for months. As of Friday, the Marine Exchange of Southern California reported 79 ships in port. Of those, 30 were container ships. In January, the container ship backup topped 109 vessels. But since March, Project 44, which tracks global supply chains, says there's been an increase in transit times for ships coming from China to West Coast ports.
You don't shut down one of the biggest world sports, ports in Shanghai and elsewhere without having an impact, and they can't find truckers now, etc. It may sound familiar to the U.S. side. So the logistics problems are going to continue longer, and with the major force, being China.
This is also a big concern for U.S. ag exports. The president of the National Pork Producers Council telling us tighter restrictions are once again creating a supply chain logjam with the lack of workers at export ports. This is slowing U.S. pork product moving into China.
With the lockdowns, they're not getting product loaded over there, so of course our meat going back is not getting unloaded. So definitely a concern on this global trade and how we get that product transported from our country to others.
Wolter says China's zero tolerance policy on COVID is also curbing consumer demand for ag products, including pork. However, he says exports had already slowed before the resurgence of the pandemic. Now, pork exports to China are well off the record levels set back in 2021, as their pork producers have been in the process of rebuilding their herd after being hit by African swine fever. And African swine fever is still an issue. The latest case, a dead wild boar, was discovered in Rome, Italy, and tested positive for the virus. Now, earlier this year, an isolated outbreak of the deadly virus was reported in northwest Italy. So this is the first time a case has been detected in the center of the country. Now, health authorities sealed off the affected area. It's estimated there are 2.3 million wild boar in Italy, with around 20,000 of the wild pigs living in the province of Rome. Now, China suspended pork imports from Italy back in January after the illness was detected in a wild boar. China has been rebuilding its own swine herd since an outbreak of the disease there, but how it's going is anyone's guess.
So it's really hard to know where they're at just because the information over there is difficult to get. We did hear that this week, I think they've just finally got to where they're above cost of production. They've had an extremely depressed pork price over there. So we're encouraged that we can still export product over there.
It's estimated the disease wiped out half of China's hog herd back in 2019. Meanwhile, the U.S. continues to face more cases of a deadly bird flu. USDA now reporting 171 commercial flocks have been confirmed with highly pathogenic avian influenza. The latest cases confirmed in Wisconsin, South Dakota, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Total HPAI confirmations stand at 283 flocks in 32 states, totaling more than 37 million birds. The outbreak continuing to impact the cost of eggs, with wholesale eggs averaging about $2.40 a dozen. That's up 12% from the end of April and nearly 73% higher from last year. The Mexican government apparently snubbing Texas and moving a proposed border rail link to New Mexico, saying they can no longer rely on the state. Now, the change comes after Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott required all commercial trucks coming from Mexico undergo extra inspections for drugs or immigrants. That in turn led to a dramatic rise in wait times at the Texas border crossings until an agreement could be reached with Mexican states to increase border security. The Mexican diplomats met last week with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. They instead touted a rail line linking Mexican seaports on the Pacific with a crossing in New Mexico. Now, I spoke recently with Texas Ag Commissioner Sid Miller about the change of plans, and he says he's working to bring Mexico back to the table on this.
I'm in negotiations with the Mexicans and the Mexican government to try to rectify that. I think we can. We just have to give them some assurance that we're going to be good neighbors and not cause that kind of trade disruption again, because we've lost some trust with our neighbors to the south because of that.
Several companies reported loads of vegetables were ruined after the trucks hauling them ran out of diesel and couldn't run their chillers in the sweltering heat during the increased inspections that ran for a week last month. Miller told me economists say over $4 billion worth of product was lost. Another round of severe weather struck the south, leaving damage along the Gulf Coast and across Oklahoma last week. The decimation of a marijuana farm in the state caught on camera, a twister tearing buildings to shreds. At least one possible tornado also struck Mobile, Alabama. Damage also reported to the east across Mobile Bay. Meteorologist Matt Yaroslavic joining us. And Matt, we're looking at a big warm-up this week in the Midwest, which might finally get some planters rolling there.
Yeah, Clinton, that's right. We're going to be dealing with a big warm-up this week, especially east of the Rockies, and that's part of our weather headlines. And you can see our weather watch. It's going to be hot and humid in the eastern U.S., and we're also going to be talking about more rain and storms possible in the northern plains, as well as the Pacific Northwest, where temperatures will be a little on the cooler side. Planting, though, gets back going in the east, hopefully with a couple of dry days, especially in parts of the Midwest that have seen a lot of rain lately, so they finally are getting a break. So let's take a look at the map for Monday, May 9th. It's warm and mostly dry in the east, just a few showers along the east coast and down in Florida. It's going to be hot and humid around the middle part of the country, out ahead of that dry line, very humid air coming into parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And then back in the northern plains, some showers continuing. Higher elevation snow showers still possible in the Rockies, with cooler conditions in the west. And I've been busy doing a little planting as well. Here's a look at my garden in St. Joseph County, Indiana. We're not talking acres here, just a patch of ground in my backyard. And this year I've planted some corn, tomatoes, zucchini, along with bell peppers and some green beans as well. Just a little bit of work I've made for myself to keep it all weeded this summer. I'll keep you updated on how it turns out. And I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
The winner of this year's World Food Prize has been announced, and she's a NASA scientist. Dr. Cynthia Rosenzweig was named the 2022 World Food Prize laureate. The organization says it's for her pioneering work in modeling the impact of climate change on food production worldwide. Dr. Rosenzweig is the founder of the Agricultural Model Intercomparison and Improvement Project, known as AgMIP. They say her leadership in that project has helped decision makers in more than 90 countries enhance their resilience to climate issues. She is also a senior research scientist at the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies.
This type of interdisciplinary work has and will continue to aid USDA in making investments and programmatic decisions, particularly as we develop climate-smart agricultural approaches, build on a greater understanding of the impacts of climate change on our food systems.
She was awarded a $250,000 prize at a recent ceremony. Last week brought plenty of turbulence to the nation's biggest markets. Well, we'll see how that translates into our commodity markets coming up next. And a lesson in poultry producing from some very cute chicks and kindergartners in the country.
Find farm equipment on Machinery Pete's May 17th online auction. No reserve, no buyer fees. Start bidding now at auctions.machinerypete.com.
We're joined today by Steve Georgie with Allendale Incorporated. So as we talk about what's been going on with these markets, Steve, we look at the overall like broader economy market, and we've seen some pretty big movement last week as far as, you know, you look at the Dow and you look at the NASDAQ. What's going on here, and how does that play into commodities?
You know, how about just we follow the theme of volatility, right? So volatility is continuing, and we're versed here in the stock market, equities, you name it. And so a lot of that, though, when you look at and we follow this managed money, everyone wants to talk about managed money and things like that. The position sizes that we've seen and the long positions we have in commodities in general, when you get this uncertainty in equities and you get this the market swings as we're seeing, what it does is that it takes this more managed money, and it's not that I don't want to be long, it's maybe the idea that I don't want to be as long. And so you get if the stocks are working lower, or if you get those 1,000-point swings like we've seen, it does start to ripple into commodities as well. And you do get that pressure just because it's maybe I don't want to be as long as we are. And so it does feel that way. And you get that more negativity up front. But longer term, there's still a bigger story out there. But right now, it does matter. We do need to watch some of these equities as well, just from a managed money perspective.
As we talk about, you know, what's been going on with the Fed and interest rates, how does that play into the, you know, overall strength of the dollar and kind of this global economy that we're in?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. You know, and I think when you really look at it, you talk about interest rates and even just the forecast in which we see rates continuing to increase throughout the year, you know, really it's this talk, though, for commodities specifically, is that we know that there is a supply chain issues, right? And that there's other issues that are still going on. Some of the factors with Russia and Ukraine. What are we doing? What kind of demand are we going to see? And that, I think, is what's now forecasted. When you get this fear and this movement of interest rates, it's, oh my gosh, do I buy this now because it's going to get more expensive later? You know, we need to be careful there. But, you know, looking at that is keeping this volatility that we've seen in this market. I don't see it going away anytime soon.
Yeah, it'll be something to watch as we go through it. Hey, Steve, appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be back with more Ag Day coming up.
To talk to Steve Georgie one-on-one, call Allendale Incorporated at 800-262-7538 or head online to allendale-inc.com.
Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joining us here, taking a look at our drought monitor. But Matt, it's definitely going to warm up and get hotter across some parts of the country that really haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and we've got a lot more rain in parts of the northern plains expected, as well as the Pacific Northwest. But the east, for a change, is going to be staying dry. We've had a lot of moisture in the east, and those really is the only place in the country where we've seen no drought conditions persisting in the past couple of months. It's been so wet here in parts of the east, Mississippi River Valley into the Ohio Valley. Still some abnormally dry spots, which we could see expand as we head through this upcoming week with those drier conditions, but they'll get a little bit more help in the northern plains here, parts of Montana and the Dakotas, as well as the northern Rockies as well. So middle of the country, though, it's going to stay very hot and humid in parts of Texas. A couple of pop-up storms, not enough, though, to bring us some help there with a extreme to exceptional drought condition. So here's a look at the precipitation as we head through this upcoming week, and we've got, well, more rain on the backside of this week, probably by Thursday or Friday, and eventually a couple of systems here bringing some, again, more help up there to Montana and parts of the Dakotas. A little bit of shower and storm activity there through the middle part of the week in parts of Texas. That will help with the overall drought conditions, but still need a lot more rain than that. And this is why we're going to be more active in the west this week. Look at this ridge building on into the east. Very warm air coming all the way up into southern parts of Canada. And it's going to stay much cooler heading into the west, and that's because you can kind of see a couple of short waves moving through. That's going to keep things unsettled while that heat and humidity are on in the east. And it doesn't go anywhere all the way through this week and into next weekend before that ridge will start to break down. So much above normal temperatures here across a good portion of the east, but it's only the west where we're going to be below normal, and even parts of Florida with a couple shower and storm chances possible there as well. Below normal with regards to that precipitation, where we've seen enough of that already, and we need some in the west, and we are going to see some as this week progresses. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Statesboro, Georgia, sunny and warm, a high of 81 degrees. Red Lake, Minnesota, showers likely, a high of 66 degrees. And partly cloudy with a chance of showers and a high of 66 degrees in Woodland, California.
In the market to buy a good used grain truck? Stick around, folks. Coming up, we'll talk prices.
It's time to sign up for the 2022 United Pork Americas Conference in Orlando, Florida. Register today at unitedporkamericas.com and join us September 7th through the 9th.
Planting and harvesting are part of the process. Getting that grain out of the field and delivered is also important. Machinery Pete joins us with a look at some equipment to do just that.
Well, folks, I've been seeing some very aggressive bidding on good condition used grain trucks. Now let's talk Freightliner FL80s. So up until 6 months ago, the highest auction price I'd ever seen on an FL80 grain truck was $57,000, and I'd seen it twice, both times 9 years ago in the year 2013. So in April of 13, we saw an 01 model sell on a farm auction in Saskatchewan, had about 130,000 miles on it, brought $57K. And then later that year, in December of 13, on a farm auction in Hazleton, Iowa, this one I really remember because we filmed it for our Machinery Pete TV show, and it was 20 below air temp that day. But they sold an 02 model with 202,400 miles on it that brought, again, $57,000. So that was the high water mark until 6 months ago, when on November 30th, farm auction in Noblesville, Indiana, another farm auction we filmed for our Machinery Pete TV show, they sold this beautiful 04 model FL80, and this thing had 205,604 miles on it with a 20-foot Con aluminum bed, and it brought $85,000, some of the most aggressive bidding that I've seen in years. Just incredible, $85K. Well, that same auction company, Schrader Real Estate, an auction company, just had a sale last Thursday, an online farm auction out of Indiana, where they sold another 04 model FL80. This one only had 58,990 miles on it and it had a brand new Con 21-foot aluminum bed, sold for $73,000.
All right, thanks, Pete. Now, firsthand learning is always best. Up next, we'll see how these North Dakota kindergartners are learning the ropes as poultry producers in the classroom.
Your next piece of equipment is on machinerypete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on machinerypete.com.
The weather is finally warming up, the days are getting longer, and there are all kinds of baby animals being born. And those babies aren't just arriving on farms and ranches. Jody Kurzman of Ag Day affiliate KFYR reports 19 baby chicks have made their way into the world in a North Dakota kindergarten classroom.
There's a new teacher's pet in Michelle Gust's kindergarten classroom. 19 of them, actually. Everyone in this classroom has fallen in love with these baby chicks.
They're cute. I like them. And they're really fluffy. Because you get to hold them. They're soft.
Most of them even have names.
The white one's Marshmallow. Those two brown ones are Chocolate. And then that one right there and that one over there are named Cracker. And then Donut.
These babies are not just here for the cute factor. They're also helping Mrs. Gust bring science to life.
Just fun to see the excitement that the kids have.
Mrs. Gust first hatched this hands-on learning experience when she started teaching here 6 years ago. Never one to count her chickens before they hatch, she was pretty surprised when this year there were 19 baby chicks.
At the end of the incubation process, there were 19 and all 19 of my eggs hatched.
For the next 2 weeks, these little scientists will study the chicks' every move.
Students see how they move, eating, drinking, and just having them in the classroom is just a wonderful experience for the students.
Soon, these chicks will fly the coop. The chickens will go back to the farm, and the kindergartners will move on to first grade. But this is a lesson they'll never forget. In Bismarck, I'm Jody Kurzman, reporting for your news leader.
All All right, thanks, Jody. Now, Mrs. Gus got the eggs from a custodian at the school. The chicks will go back to her farm in a couple of weeks. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at Ag Day, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day on Farm Country.